All right, here we go. Welcome. Welcome to Free Together, Free Apart, Hacking Family Success. As most of you know, you are in the video world of the Vermont Center for Family Studies, and I'm Erik Thompson, Executive Director. Very pleased to have you here with us. I'm very excited about this conversation. Hello, Suzanne Brue. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you.
One of the things I'm curious about is how many people on this meeting, on this call right now, were at the conference or listened to the recording. So I can see some of your videos. If you just go like this and leave your hand up for a sec, either at it or heard the recording. Okay, that's almost, could you do it again? Just go, maybe I should go the other way. We're not on the, oh, let's do it the other way. We're not at the conference or have not heard the recording. Okay, it gives me a little sense. It gives me a little sense. So we're not going to speak over you. We're going to welcome you and orient you. Now, Suzanne, right before I introduce you, I want to do something. I just want to talk a little bit about what's coming up. So we're going to launch into this in a sec. As you know what's going on today, I'm really excited about talking to Suzanne Brue about continuing to reflect on the Inner Silence and Healthy Separateness Conference. I'm going to introduce Suzanne in a sec and tell you about how I know her. Just landed this Walter Smith 3-hour clinical conference this winter. Not exactly sure what the topic is going to be, but we're going to have the delightful presence of Walter Smith, not just for an hour. And in our clinical conference series, we're probably not going to do another free together interview with Walter. This is what we're going to do this winter. For those of you who enjoyed his recordings and his thoughts on systemic racism and Bowen Theory, I'm just so psyched we're going to have Walter back for that. So, and you probably know this already, but these recordings of our conference that we just did, which I think was the best of the three, fascinating, lots of information to study. Those recordings are available. If you didn't register for it, you get it for free if you register. If you didn't register, you can buy it. And here's what's coming up. We're going to have a talk in a couple of weeks about couples with Joy O'Neill, one of our faculty who's really done a lot of work with couples. And she's going to interview me. I've done a lot of thinking about couples. I have a lot to say. I always have a lot to say, sometimes too much. And then we also have Dan Papero coming soon for a similar. I'm going to interview Dan Papero Unplugged.
Wow.
So what do you think, Suzanne? How do you like the menu coming up?
I think that looks fantastic. Wow, you've got some great people coming up and a lot of variety and a lot of different ways to view Bowen Theory. So, wow, I'm pretty impressed. It's nice to have Dan up there. That'll be great.
I know.
Yeah.
Dan Papero, Suzanne Brue and Dan Papero and I go way back. Suzanne Brue is one of the founding members of the Vermont Center for Family Studies back in the mid-90s. She jumped on board and really contributed a tremendous amount of positive energy and wisdom to our development on the board for many, many years. She's one of these people who has just, she's a lifer for Bowen Theory. I mean, every single year of her life since then, she has been thinking carefully about Bowen Theory. And one of the people who I am most impressed with her efforts to apply the theory in her own family over many, many years. I just cannot say enough about how much respect. I had an inside seat on this for various reasons. One, we were in a supervision group together for quite a while with Dr. Ann Bunting. I heard her high quality presentations and the quality of her work and thinking then. Since then, we've just been buds, right?
Right.
We are buds. Suzanne Brue and I are buds. We have had many, many, many informal conversations over the years about the journey. And, it's pretty focused. We're both hounds for knowledge and wisdom and very passionate about family success. So we don't noodle around much.
Erik, I was just thinking about those early days with Bowen Theory. I remember when I was first introduced to Bowen Theory, and I was in a supervision group, and I raised my hand and I said, well, I don't think this applies to everybody because my husband's family from Iowa is very calm. And
Hmm.
Ann Bunting, I remember, just looked at me, and I realized then that I was walking into very different territory.
She
So
gave you
it
the
was a
look,
great moment.
the look.
Yes,
Anne
yes,
Bunting did it without words.
absolutely. It was wonderful.
The look.
The look.
Yes, well, I remember some of her observations of you and your husband and
Yes, yes,
your husband's family, and of
yes,
course, the idea that if you're all piled together, you're probably all chronically anxious and not get caught in
right.
the illusion that your
It just
husband's less
looked,
anxious than you. Was that the spirit of that
well, yeah,
look?
and it just looks different when you have a Midwestern Lutheran Iowa farm family. And
Uh-huh.
here I am, an urban Jew, it's like,
Yeah.
I thought they were calm and we weren't. And then I realized we're all in the same boat. So,
Yes. So Suzanne Brew, born and raised in D.C. Brother played for the Celtics. Suzanne Brew, he was a good friends with Bill Russell. Suzanne Brew's father was a successful business person, beautiful Jewish family. And Suzanne Brew has a master's in counseling. She worked in career counseling at 2 universities around here, UVM for 10 years, University of Vermont for 10 years. But I would say, Suzanne, that, oh, well, she wrote a book. Along the way, she wrote a book, really into Myers-Briggs type, wrote a book about type and exercise that really is a very special book, very unique in the Myers-Briggs world. So she's, Suzanne Brew can do a number of things. And then she learned TM many years ago and has really gotten more into TM recently, and also her Jewish faith.
yes.
Yeah.
Do,
You want to say anything about Judaism and Bowen?
well, I would say that I learned TM many years ago, and then I let it drop, and then I picked it up about 12 years ago. And really, Eric, I got to thank you for that encouragement. But TM, I mean, I've always been a practicing Jew and member of synagogue, but I never honestly had the spiritual part of it that was moving until I learned TM. And I would say TM brought me into the spiritual life of Judaism. I think it went that way. And then at the age of 71, a few years ago, I became a bat mitzvah. So, but I wouldn't have done that without TM. I really wouldn't have.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll never forget about your journey with Judaism is this thing you learned to do about blessing your husband.
I did.
Could you tell them a little bit about that and perhaps why I thought it was so special?
Well, I'm trying to think why it just feels very natural to me now. But before going to bed, I bless him, and I wish him a wonderful sleep, and I feel gratitude toward him, and give him a
Mm,
little squeeze, and just say, I'm just grateful, and I wanted just to. It's really a gratitude blessing, and
mm,
a wishing for a wonderful sleep and a refreshing night, and
mm.
waking up easily. So
When you do
it's just,
that, do you touch him?
I usually
Physically
just
touch
like
him?
hold his hand, or sometimes I just put my hand on his back or something, or,
Okay.
and he loves
The
it. I
touch
mean,
is part of it.
yeah, the
Yes, I
touch is
can tell
part
you as a husband, I already knew he loved it. But why
of
did this matter to me? How would you say that? Why do you think I remember this so well?
God, Eric, I don't know. I know you've
All right,
always, I know I felt very comfortable telling you about it, even though it was pretty personal, but it just felt
yeah,
like I wanted to tell you about it.
right.
Um, I think, I,
Well,
I
I think
think
it's because,
I
a
can't answer
wonderful
for you.
marriage has tension in it.
The
And
what?
I saw this as a very intentional practice on your part. I
Yeah,
would call it an I position, defining yourself to that relationship, how you wanted
yeah,
to be in that relationship. And
right.
it seemed to me that Judaism supported you in making something of a pivot in your mental attitude at that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I also was just thinking too, I've always been aware of John Gottman's work, in terms of like, how many positive, having positive interactions, and how it could be just a very small thing, but you really need to have the 5 positives to the 1 negative in order really to have successful relationships. So I always thought of that as something I wanted to, it was a positive moment, and I knew it had value. And maybe this was all just part of it. But
Suzanne, I think you get about 8 positives for a day when you do that once.
yeah.
I remember, so those of you who don't know John Gottman, Dan Papero introduced us to John Gottman years ago.
Yeah.
He gave us some long talks about John Gottman and his wonderful research attempting to predict divorce after watching a 15-minute, having a 15-minute session where the couple would sit in a chair all hooked up with all kinds of neurophysiological data, sweat response. And one of the things he concluded, which was data-based, was that the sustainable marriages, they had something like a 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 ratio of positive and negative affect moments. And I remember him saying it could be just something like just a touch.
Right.
Just the simple act of a touch. If you watch it on video, they might be fighting, but she touches him, or he touches her, or he smiles at her. They were counting at a micro level. So that influenced you, huh?
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
Isn't it awesome, Suzanne, that we've had so much access to this wisdom over all these years? The Vermont Center for Family Studies has been a gift to us.
It has, for sure. And Bowen Theory has been a gift.
Oh my God.
I mean, when I discovered it 30 years ago, it was painful. It still is painful, actually. But
Why?
well, maybe part of the pain.
Let's talk about pain. Let's talk about pain.
Like pain. It's like you get these insights that you would like maybe be okay not noticing, and also there's, I mean, it's good, but you know that it's all up to you, and you can't blame anybody else, as tempting as it is. So if you're going to be so it's like
I've
you
always
just
loved
always
the
think your part.
accountability.
Yeah.
Accountability. Bowen
Yeah.
Theory delivers accountability. If you get into it, first thing you're going to learn is it's you, buddy.
So bad.
So, Suzanne, our topic today is being and differentiation.
Got it.
Would you
Yes.
would you share a little? Let's start. You want to start us off on that? What are you thinking about this?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this too, Eric, and I'm just trying to, oh boy, I've been thinking about traditional roles and what Maharishi thought about traditional roles. And it's really meant a lot to me to kind of investigate this. So let's see. Quite how to say this, because I'm careful. I just want to say that I'm not going to try to square any of this with modern the third wave of feminism or modern views of role of sexuality or roles or genders or anything. I'm just going to say what I've learned from Maharishi and that what has meant something to me. So he had a view that what we do that is in support of nature is the least remove stress, that it's a more stressful life if you live it in support of nature. And he viewed women and mother energy as a very different kind of energy than father energy. And that it's not like men can't do what women do, or women can't do what men do, or mothers and fathers don't do many of the same thing, but he viewed that energy differently, and he valued the mother energy. So I have found it actually really interesting to look at that and to take back up and look at what is mother energy in my life, what is feminine energy in my life, and getting a little more comfortable and actually finding it pretty calming to think about that, that it is something that is that creates less stress. And, in a way, I've often thought about standing in front of the yogurt, the refrigerated yogurt in the grocery store, and just walking away because there's just too many choices, like fruit on the top, fruit on the bottom, goat's milk, just the various choices of plain or Greek. I mean, it's like, man, I just walk away from all that. So I've actually find that, when I kind of get into my nature, and I realize I do have, feminine mother nature in me. I mean, there's not any mother nature, but my nature is to be feminine and to be a mother too. And I've just started noticing that more and enjoying it more. So,
Mm. How has that changed you? And I'll throw in, I got a few quotes from Suzanne from the conference, her
yeah,
talk on the mother at the conference. It's actually quite striking how many people really, really noted how much they liked your talk. One of the things you shared was this quote from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of TM, that
yeah,
the mother is 10 times more powerful than the father in the family, and the grandmother is 10 times more powerful than the mother.
yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
how has that changed you? This sort of, it's interesting. You're describing a sense that you're tracking a lower stress state for yourself.
right, right. Well, I'm just kind of noticing things that I wouldn't expect a father to notice or a grandfather to notice. And um, like right now, we have 3 generations in our household. My son is, I'm in California right now, and my son is and his family are up here. So I've had a really neat opportunity to kind of observe the 3 generations here, and just in the more rudimentary sort of things. Let's say, Nord cooks a lot. He loves to cook. He cooks a lot. He's probably cooks most of the meals, but when it's the two of us. Erik and Hannah, they cook a lot. So there's a lot of cooking going on, but it's not the cooking, it's the serving that I see that is more, I see the difference as it kind of breaks there. I mean, I will see, for instance, that I will notice, I'll notice who's eating what more. Hannah and I will do that. We'll, bring out something else if the kids aren't eating something. I mean, it's just a way of serving and noticing who's eating what, and being a bit of a, kind of a mother about that. I mean, that's not, I shouldn't define something by it, but it's noticing and the kids in a different way than the men do, than the fathers do. It's, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know what you see in your family, Erik. I mean, you're certainly a very sensitive dad, but do you see a difference in what Sarah notices and what you notice?
Oh, 100%. I'm surrounded by females. I have 4 daughters and a wife. So it's interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah, my wife has a very different relationship with my daughters than I do. It's just different. Um,
yeah,
one thing I want to say is just for context that, why have this topic at our conference, Inner Silence and Healthy Separateness, exploring the interrelationships between differentiation of self, transcendence, and mindfulness? Because part of what's going on in that conference, which is an ongoing dialogue, will happen again next year, is the examination of ancient wisdom traditions and how they might contribute to differentiation of self, to our understanding of differentiation of self. I will say that one of the thoughts I've had recently is that I'm not sure we're going to get extremely high quality information from evolutionary theory about higher states of differentiation of self. I think we get fantastic stuff. We learn about separation calls and a lot of how anxiety flows through a group. But for higher states of differentiation of self, we may need to be looking to the ancient wisdom traditions. So we had quite a talk with Susie Dilbeck.
right.
Suzanne Brue's done a lot of research on this, and we met this woman, Susie Dilbeck, who was close to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, spent a lot of time around him. And that was some kind of talk, Suzanne, that
That
you
was
invited
amazing.
me to sit in on. I basically listened.
Yeah, I
She's
mean, she had a different quality. Her presence was remarkable.
hmm,
Um, I mean, these are things you really can't describe. You just have to experience. But she had just this beautiful presence, a beautiful confidence, a grace about her.
yeah,
Um,
very warm,
very what?
very warm,
Very warm, very warm,
dignified woman, lifelong educator, educational doctorate.
very interested in what we thought too. Do you know? I mean, she was just, she had a certain kind of confidence and grace about her. And, I would say too, if I could just, the longer, I think one of the greatest things I've gotten out of meditation is more confidence, more, more confidence in my judgment, more confident in my family, more confident in my decisions, feeling like I know the right thing to do and more confident that I do. And
Are you more confident in your femininity?
yeah, but yes, that's true too. I'm more confident in my role, but I used to, and I've loved, and I'm actually segueing a little bit, Eric, but I have loved Bowen theory for so many years, but I was feeling like I was trying to manage too much with the intellect of Bowen theory. And I needed, I,
Mhm.
and I think that that was only going to take me so far because I wasn't so confident. I mean, it wasn't, the more I worked with it, it was great. And I developed a lot of confidence in managing myself and the family. But I've now less, like the term managing yourself in a family doesn't quite resonate as much with me. I'm kind of on a little bit of a different, uh,
Yeah,
I
I think you're
understand.
experimenting with
Yeah,
new approaches to growth and basic
yeah,
stuff, and you're an interesting voice in that because you have done so much of the traditional work in Bowen theory.
right.
So I want to follow up with you on this and just interview a little bit about this,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
So you just said something interesting that this term managing self, perhaps we could say managing self with the intellect in the family. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you're saying,
yeah, yeah,
is not calling to you so much after so many years right now. You're interested in something else.
right.
What is it? This other thing? How would you articulate this other thing?
I, and I don't know if I can do that. I mean, it's beyond, it's spiritual. I mean, it's a feeling um, God, Eric, I mean, there's a spiritual component. There's a component that I guess I've released myself. I'm releasing myself from the intellect and sort of opening myself up to more universal ways of thinking. I'm more open up to receiving wisdom as opposed to cranking it through. If that makes sense. I mean, I'm just more open to that, to following what uh, what moves me and what feels right, as opposed to analyzing, working with the 8 concepts and triangles and all that. I'm looser and able to open myself up more to winner wisdom that I didn't know about, that comes from just being open.
Yeah, I think perhaps you're experimenting with the unfolding of self
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
you're discovering that these techniques that we, have lived and cherished and still do,
right,
that are, you could put in the category of using the intellect to manage self through the concepts.
yeah,
Um, there's something that you're exploring that doesn't quite fit into that bucket. It's
yeah,
different.
yeah,
And receptivity to wisdom. And
yeah.
I don't know, is there a story that, or I don't want to force you to tell a story, but I'm just interested, very interested in what you just said. Receptivity, What are you talking about?
Gosh, it's, geez, I don't really know what to say. There's a
Have you
lot of
had
things
any
I
experiences?
can't articulate. I mean, I'm having a hard time articulating
Yeah,
because
which,
it's
by the way, I'm
completely,
totally good with. I think it's a good thing because you are out on an edge. And I
yeah,
appreciate your willingness to struggle along with difficult conversations in this
yeah.
meeting. I think it's very, very good. So, and part of it could also be something, the system, the presence of our system, of our Bowen theory community, which has not traditionally valued what you're talking about. So you may be up against that to some degree, I think. But in my view, is there something that happened or a moment when that really captures what you're talking about that you
Um,
can think of in meditation, outside of meditation, in the synagogue?
so I would say that knowing that I am in a transcendent space, that is not awake, it's not sleeping, it's not dreaming, it's in a different space. I've experienced being in a transcendent space. So that has been kind of remarkable for me to know that I've been in a space that I don't even know what it was, but I'm not doing any of those things. I would also say probably a big thing for me that I'm realizing now is that I visited my grandfather's ancestral home. So he grew up in Pinsk in Belarus, and he's my only grandparent that came to this country from another country. So I really wanted to, and he happened to be the person, the grandfather. He was also, and probably more importantly, he was the grandfather that I was closest to. And I think that I wanted to kind of walk where he walked and live his experience because we were so close. That made a huge difference for me being in Pinsk and being connected with something that I just knew was greater, it was just greater than, like, I had this physical reaction being there. So
Mm.
having that I'm having this sort of physical reaction being there, I knew that there was a spirit. I mean, I just knew there was a spirit. And, I know that Andrea Maloney Shar, who I think is on this call, Andrea, Andrea has talked about her experience that even when I spoke to her this morning of of visiting her ancestral graves in Europe. I mean um, that she even said she got goosebumps and went up to her, shivers up her neck just thinking about it. So I know there's something more there. This is not, we're not working continually on doing family diagrams. This is something greater. And
Yeah,
so it
of
is
course,
something,
that the family diagrams help structure that trip, but
yeah,
I think you're very clearly articulating a sense of something beyond that's
yeah,
mysterious and fascinating to you. You
yeah,
called it a spirit. You felt the sureness. I'll just say, something I've been thinking about, Suzanne, is just the simple idea that the multi-generational family is a field of consciousness that
oh,
might exist in a similar way to the invisible field of gravity, and that it's very real. And maybe there's a lot we could still learn about it,
absolutely,
and that
yeah,
it's influencing us, and we're influencing it. Ancient traditions have amazing things to say about this reality. And what you're saying, I think, fits the possibility that you can touch into that field
yeah,
by going to ancestral locations. Somehow
yeah,
the field integrates with the material world, or the visible world, I should say, in such a way that somehow it was touched, or you touched it, or it touched you there in Pinsk.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way of saying it too. I mean, it's just,
Mm.
um,
If you don't know about Rupert Sheldrake, he has a theory of morphogenic fields that he calls fields of memory that guide the development of species.
Yeah.
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, biologist from Oxford,
Yeah.
now an independent scholar. So, why do you
So
call it spiritual?
because it is,
Why do you pick that word?
well, well, it's beyond, I mean, it's beyond what, I guess I picked that because I do think it's beyond knowing. I mean, it's beyond, it's just, it's beyond the physical world. Like, why do I go to Pinsk and just feel something that I could never, it connected me to a past. It connected me to something that was very powerful. And
Mm.
it made a difference. I mean, I came back from that trip different. I came back different. So
When you say spiritual, do you mean like it wasn't exactly just psychological?
no, exactly. It wasn't
So
psychological. It
what's
wasn't.
the
It was
difference?
not psychological. It
What,
was
how
not.
do you, why do you say that? Of course, the
I
skeptical
really
side will
don't
say, how do you know that, Suzanne Brew? But I want to know, how come? Why do you say that?
I know psychological because I understand when I'm being psychological. It's like I'm like trying to, I'm working on figuring out something when it's psychological. When it's spiritual, it's coming to me. It's coming to me. So it's coming to me. So I know I feel the difference. I mean, I'm very sure of the difference when I experience it. So one takes more work, and the spiritual doesn't take any work. It just comes. So
Mm.
yeah,
I'm interested in this possibility of an effortless, well, I'll just say this. I think the technologies of Bowen theory, the techniques, because you get a theory, it's an amazing scientific theory, fascinating. It's not actually a science yet. It's on its way towards it, but maybe it'll get there. But it's a beautiful body of ideas. And then there's these practices mixed into it. And the practices are precious. But as you know, I'm absolutely fascinated with finding more practices.
yeah,
I don't know if you heard me talk to Mike Kerr last week or whenever
I
it
did.
was. And I said to him at the end, something basically to put in a nutshell, the practices aren't good enough. I said, the outcomes we're getting are just, they leave something to be desired. They're great. On the one hand, they're great. We could talk about that for 2 hours. But on the other hand, my opinion, they're not good enough.
Yeah,
And he didn't say, I didn't say it like that, but he basically just said, yeah, I can't argue with you.
Erik,
That was interesting.
I
I
thought that
love
was
him. He's so
yeah.
open-minded. So anyways, I like what you're saying. I think it's fascinating.
I was just thinking, what wasn't good enough. I mean, I a couple of thoughts there, and just back to the conference. I had two thoughts. I think it's really interesting to hear people who have been in the meditation world for so long become really fascinated with Bowen theory. And I'm thinking about, which
Yeah.
I thought that was really great because it's wonderful to have that. I mean, Bowen theory has been in the background of my life for over 30 years, and it's wonderful to have that there,
Yeah.
and being able to meditate, then now to find meditation, which is so guiding for me. But I think one of the things that I've thought about, and what you were just saying, that what wasn't enough, one thing that I found through meditation and through, I found more love, and more value, um, just expressing more love to people and feeling more love, and more love in my life. And there was something, and there was something, God, I want to say this so respectfully to Bone Theory, but there was something I never thought about pure love. I thought more about boundaries, when I was in
Yes.
that, when I was trying to kind of figure out things with just that, with that being a big paradigm. I felt more about boundaries and the concepts and triangles. So then kind of I find through the last couple of years, and more recently too, it's more about love. And I'm doing I think I'm doing a lot better in my family. Thinking more about love and yeah, and not being so worried about boundaries.
Hmm. I wonder if you've arrived at some degree of differentiation such that you can now go there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this core concept of Bowen theory starts with the word different,
yeah,
separate, healthy separateness. It's the central thrust in a way. There is also this unifying, expanding dimension when you look at the idea of kind of putting your arms all around the whole big family multi-generationally and saying, I am responsible kind of for all of this.
yeah,
And I'm going to rise to the level of being sort of a citizen of my entire family and a leader. That's a
right.
unifying impulse,
Yeah,
which, by the way, I will tell you that I feel right now when I have the reds and the blues, my arms, because I think it's just my nature. My arms are around both,
yeah.
like my family. I view the whole thing as my family. I view the Trump voters as my family. Um, so anyways, listen, this is a good point to allow people to reflect some on what you have shared with us.
Okay.
You shared quite a lot there, Brew.
Wow.
And here we have the opportunity now to go into breakout rooms. People have tended to really enjoy this. I will say, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. One thing you could do is you could leave the meeting for 10 minutes and come back. We'll let you back in. We will not be offended. That sort of is one way of solving the puzzle of what happens to send people into a breakout room where the person isn't there. It's a little easier for us. Check out this quote. I'll just pause on this because I made this
Yeah.
slide. If that ain't detriangling, I don't know what is. I think it's a high level of detriangling.
Right, right.
Some more quotes here from, this is stuff from that Susie Dilbeck conversation. I'm just going to let people read it. Along the lines of this, these are Suzanne's slides from our conference. We heard that the idea that the mother's attention enlivens the intelligence of the children. Through her attention, she enlivens the intelligence of the children. I shared this one before. So here's our breakout suggestions that we traditionally do. Offer to you as suggestions. I suggest skip the introductions. It's not really about meeting people. I want to provide people with the opportunity to integrate their thinking about these topics, which include completely differing with it or, wondering why I'm getting into us and them talk. So there's some guidelines for you. I suggest you just dive in. I'm going to put you in groups of 3, and I'm going to track the time, but it's going to be about 10 minutes. It might be 9 minutes. And then we'll come back and I'll allow you to have some time to interact with Suzanne. So give me a moment here while I let Zoom do its thing. Got to find my thinking about that Suzanne Brue's first half hour there.
I just love her thinking about how she's opening herself up to other forces, if you will, and how that's presenting her with confidence and love, and I presume calm, and how there's just something else out there. And I think you said it beautifully in terms of there's a field of consciousness that was nicely illustrated by her visit to her grandfather's hometown.
Yeah.
Because that resonates for me too. There's a power out there that you periodically come upon that is hard to describe. And I think you both did it beautifully in terms of describing that.
Thank you. I think another way to say it, Kim, might be that the family system is an amazing mystery.
Mhm. Mm.
It's a system, which means a wider wholeness.
Mhm.
So I want to invite some voices here of new friends, people we don't know. Anybody want to share what you're thinking about or ask Suzanne a question? Love to hear. Just what's this got you thinking about here? We just have a few minutes to do that. Yes. Paula, yes. You're muted.
Am I muted?
Now we hear you.
Hi,
Good.
Paula.
Hi. So
Hey.
I was really fascinated by what you said about a feeling that is not psychological, but is spiritual.
Yeah.
And I too have experienced those moments. And they come when they come. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing, self-hypnosis or whatever. It can turn up anytime. And for me, it's hard to find the words. It's the most peaceful feeling in the world. My whole self becomes very, very calm, and everything is okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any other words to describe
Yeah.
it. And the only thing I'm thinking about now at my grand old age of having hit, 80, I'm thinking that in a way, it's like being a small child.
Huh. It's very loving space.
This everything is okay experience is
Yeah.
very interesting. I think it is a quality of self. That, Bowen's got this thing about there's always an upside. No matter how bad it is, if you can find the upside, you're more coming from self. And this is a state where you just are flooded almost with upside.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. And I think that must have something to do with differentiation and a non-anxious presence in the family. Anybody else? I'd love to welcome anyone who wants to kind of differ or push back. What are you thinking about? How was your small group? What was interesting to you there? Especially want to welcome new voices. Some of you who I don't know. Love to hear what you're thinking about. Yeah, Leslie. You're muted.
Sorry, I know I'm not a new voice, but since nobody else was speaking up, Suzanne and I were just had a chance to talk in the break room, and and we also talked about that notion of the becoming more differentiated, going into this more loving space as a coming to you versus a psychological where you're working at it. And I was thinking about differentiation and how Bowen would talk about how you've reached your basic level of differentiation when you leave the family to become to leave and start your own family or live your own life. And that in order to increase that differentiation over time, after that, it took intentional effort. And I think that's what I'm learning from the TM is that it might be just the opposite. I think a lot of the intentional effort has been extremely useful in terms of expanding my awareness of a lot of getting myself a little off of autopilot. But I think it also then creates different kinds of obstacles. And to have studied Bowen theory for 30 years and have internalized enough of that kind of awareness where I have a sense of I can see the triangles while we're sitting at the dinner table with the kids and the grandkids and whatever. Focusing on that now becomes an obstacle to actually becoming more differentiated and learning how to look inward and to just be. I mean, that experience of just being, and I just completely let go and say, I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to do anything. Just be. And I can get to that place a little bit now. It has absolutely, not only has it helped me become calmer, it has helped me to be better differentiated in the rest of my life. I mean, I hate to say this word, but it's almost like it's magical. I mean, I'm not into spiritual, so to me, it's just sort of magical. But I do think it's that there's a yin yang there, you know, the effort, you've got to put in some effort. At the same time, you have to also just let it come to you. That's what's hard.
Leslie, I would like you to think about a follow-up where you, like Suzanne, you as a presenter at the conference we just finished, I would interview you and follow up on what you just said. Because I would like to keep this conversation going from the conference. I don't think we're ready to stop.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. We'll talk about when to do that. I want to mention that we are so grateful for the contributions people on this show have been making to our organization. It's not free to produce this, and we have a lot of volunteer energy, but we do have costs. And when people make, it doesn't have to be a big contribution, any contribution at all. It sends a wonderful signal to us that you appreciate it. If you appreciate it, if you don't contribute. But if you do appreciate, this is what your contribution will do. Help us strengthen families. And that's how we do it. And I also want to mention, I'm flipping around here, forgive me, that we do have this professional training program. It's off to sea now, but we'll be accepting applications for it again in the spring for next year. And just again, to go through what's coming up here as we're winding down, I do want to just mention again how excited I am that Walter Smith has agreed. He's a little bit picky, so I wasn't sure at all whether he would be interested in doing this, but he is interested. And it's going to be a collaboration between Walter and I. That's the way he wants to do it. And so we'll have a nice Zoom meeting. I don't know yet. Stay tuned for more information about the topics and so forth. We're going to be meeting on that soon, and also the date, but it will be this winter. Once again, the conference is available for purchase. What a menu. Each of these people talked from a different angle. And that we have this coming up in a few weeks. Joy O'Neill, a couple specialist, she's going to interview me. We're going to have a conversation about satisfying sustainable marriage, one of my great passions. And then, as you can see, Dan Papro coming up in December. So that's what's coming. Suzanne, Brue, I got to give you the last word here.
Well, my one. Thank you, Erik, and thank you, everybody. I mean, it's really great to be able to think with a group and Erik, I appreciate the silences that you are comfortable with, because I think it really helps all of us think better. So I appreciate that, and just want to say thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Every time you stumbled around, what came out afterwards was pearls.
Thanks.
And that was a wonderful meeting, Suzanne. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All you've
Nice.
done and all you're thinking about, and onward ho.
Onward.
All right.
See you guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.